Hey everybody, Blake T. Wild here, and welcome back to another episode of What Is. Today I'm taking a brief respite from the Ultimate Year to discuss one of my favorite X-Men comics. It's weird, it's crazy, it's wacky, it's sad, it's about the multiverse, and like most X-Men comics, it's about Professor Charles Xavier being a terrible person. I have a whole playlist on my channel about just that. Check it out. And don't forget to like this video for weird X-Men stories. What's your favorite weirdest X-Men story? Let me know. And subscribe for more content just like this. But before I actually get into the story itself, there's a sort of preamble that we have to get through first, and that is a 4-issue story arc within the pages of Astonishing X-Men from 2012 by Greg Pak and Mike McKone. That's where these characters are established and the overall story that you'll see today begins. It's like a bonus mini-episode of What Is inside of What Is. You're welcome. Released in 2012, written by Greg Pak with art by Mike McKone, this is Astonishing X-Men Exalted. The story begins at the island of Utopia, because this is a post-X-Men schism, post-X-Men versus the Avengers world, ladies and gentlemen, and we all know what that means. Cyclops and Wolverine have split up, they're leading their own versions of the X-Men across the country, or whatever, and everybody's sad. Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, sits in the locker room staring at the locker that was meant to be for Wolverine, and then he blasts the entire wall. Later, Cyclops arrives at a dock of the island and meets with the other inhabitants as it suddenly starts raining, and then Storm arrives. Scott asks why she's back from Wakanda so soon, and she explains that she uncovered something happening in the island country of Santo Marco. 2 hours later, Storm and Cyclops fly in the X-Jet to Santo Marco. Cyclops makes idle chat in his down-to-business way, and he finally asks Storm why she's staring at him so much, and she says that he's just so different. And Scott tells Aurora to drop it because Emma has been saying the same thing ever since the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, in which Cyclops, possessed by the Phoenix Force, killed Professor X. They arrive at Santo Marco to discover several Sentinels, and the duo make quick work of the machines. They land on a precipice when another Sentinel attempts to strike, but Cyclops quickly destroys it. Then Storm kisses Scott! Cyclops steps back in surprise, stammering over himself in confusion, and Storm begins hovering above him as he demands to know who she really is. And then a voice appears out of the aether, ordering Storm to get out of there, and the voice says that it's shutting him down. And sometime later, Scott awakens to Emma Frost's voice, and discovers that he's in a large red capsule. He finds Emma across from him in a tube of her own, and Cyclops uses his optic blasts to shoot his way out, but the energy goes nowhere but upward into a strange machinery that's attached to the capsule. And then Scott discovers he and Emma are not alone. Nearby, Wolverine asks a young Nightcrawler what happened, and the boy tells the old man that they found another Cyclops. And in a dark city, a man pleads with a doctor and soldiers to help his daughter, whose respirator is starting to fail, but they say that the power grid is completely down and there's nothing they can do. Then the power reignites, and humanity cheers. The man and his daughter gaze at the beautiful light, and he thanks God, and then a voice behind him says, "Thank the heroes down below who have sacrificed everything for you. Then thank your savior, and his dream that your feeble species shall not pass from this earth." Then we get a quick history lesson of just what exactly happened on this Earth. After decades of persecution, Magneto led an army of mutants which conquered the nations of man. Afterwards, Homo sapiens were enslaved and condemned to squalor, cast by the overwatching eyes of the Sentinels. Until the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Man fought back. Mutant heroes who fought for the equality of lives, be they Homo sapien or superior. Scott Summers later wakes up in an extravagant bedroom to find a man calling himself the Savior. He helps Scott up and explains that here on this world, Cyclops is revered as a god. Then Storm arrives as Scott says he needs to return to his own world. Then he blasts Savior and escapes into the hallway, and wakes back up in the tube. Yet again, he optically blasts the tube, and yet again, the energy is retrieved by the machinery atop, and drives itself throughout the city. Emma tells Scott that all he's doing is giving the enemy exactly what they want. Then she points out the dying body of Namor above them, as she explains that each of the capsules is designed and calibrated perfectly to absorb the energy of its prisoners' mutations and powers. Meaning that they're using mutants as batteries. Like the Matrix. The Mutrix? Cyclops, in shock, calls out to Logan and asks how long he's been there. But this Wolverine explains that his name is James Howlett, and he's the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's expedition to Shangri-La, and he's also the coolest Wolverine. Emma then reveals that she's not his Emma. Her full name is Emmeline Summers Frost, and she's from New Albion, the X Society. Cyclops tells him that he gets the picture, it's a multiverse thing. Then he reveals that while the Storm he met might have been different from his Storm that he knows, she still keeps her thief tools on her. Cyclops says that the mutants are in danger, and that this group will have to act as the X-Men. Then he uses Storm's tools to slice the glass and escapes. He begins freeing the others as Emma takes off her helmet, and upstairs, Xavier recoils in pain as she enters his mind, and he orders the Sanctifiers to be sent to the generator room, and then he returns to his chamber. Downstairs, Cyclops and the others free a version of Kitty Pryde, calling herself Shadow, when the Sanctifiers arrive. They make quick work of the guards as Emma alerts them that others are on the way. Then Howlett starts ripping out the large blades kept in his back and prepares to stab them into the guards as Cyclops orders him to stand down. Cyclops then blasts his beam as Howlett snicks his golden claws and slices apart Cyclops' beams. Howlett explains that his skeleton is coated with adamantine, the metal of the gods. And Cyclops says that, hey, he'll just have to shoot him through the eyes then. Then Howlett laughs, retracts his claws, and taps Cyclops on the shoulder asking what the plan is. As Emma and Shadow just kind of wait for this to be over. Everyone then escapes, and eventually they locate an armory that houses all the items of those that have been captured. Inside, Howlett finds his clothing, Kurt Wagner finds his lunchbox, and Emmeline finds something far more nauseating. A room separated from the main, filled to the brim with the visors of countless heroes, once called Cyclops. And in her hands, she holds the visor of her husband. Suddenly, the voice of the Savior strikes through Scott's mind, explaining that while this seems hard to witness, there's a whole perfect reason why this was done. Cyclops demands to know how many mutants he's done this to, and Savior says that if it makes Scott feel any better, it all started with himself. And Charles Xavier, the savior of the world, sits in a large cerebral chamber which is connected to hundreds of beheaded Charles Xaviers from across the multiverse. Then Charles Xavier goes into a monologue. You know, for a character that's, I guess, not supposed to usually be a villain, he sure does villainously monologue quite a bit, doesn't he? He tells Cyclops of the day that the X-Men overthrew the mutant monarchy, and when he lunged his trident through Magneto's body. But when Magneto died, his final action was to rip apart the molten core of the Earth, breaking the world and wrenching the magnetic field of the atmosphere apart. Millions died in that single day, but the most brilliant minds still alive came together and created a machine on the island country of Santo Marco, a massive structure that can convert the power of mutants into raw energy needed to save the planet. Cyclops was one of those who stepped forward to sacrifice himself. But unfortunately, the structural integrity of the Earth required constant maintenance, meaning that Xavier and the others had to begin looking for more heroes. And then they ripped open the multiverse. Back downstairs, the X-Men writhe in pain from the power of Xavier's mental abilities. And Cyclops finds the remnants of Havoc and Jean Grey. Then little Kurt discovers a storage area full of Magneto helmets. Everyone is quickly outfitted with these psychic shielded helmets as Cyclops orders them all to stay close to their partners. Then the teams split up. Kurt, Shadow, and Emma are tasked with finding the X-Jet, while Cyclops and Howlett are hunting down Xavier, and the two of them fight their way through Sanctifier soldiers. Meanwhile, Emma, Kurt, and Shadow leave a trap for Storm and Xavier. Emma briefly removes her Magneto tiara, allowing the Savior into her mind, letting him see that they are after the X-Jet. Storm is sent to protect it, and young Kurt, watching her fly towards the compound at the edge of town, reveals to the others that he knows where they have to go. Then he teleports Shadow into the skies, and she slams Storm in the neck with a pressure point strike. Meanwhile, Kurt finds the X-Jet, but it's quickly destroyed by the Sanctifiers and he is blown up. And then Shadow is struck with the force of lightning greater than anything seen before. Storm cries in the rain as she returns Shadow's body to Savior alongside the Sanctifier's weird flying mech things, and Savior apologizes to Storm for what she had to do when Cyclops and Howlett reveal themselves aboard the flying mechs. Cyclops blasts Storm and Howlett drives his claws through Savior's body. Cyclops orders Storm to stand down when she unleashes lightning throughout the room. Savior picks himself up as Storm orders him to show Cyclops just what's inside her head. And it's revealed that, like, Savior has turned her into a sort of goddess of humanity, a living Cerebro for the Homo sapiens, because she is connected to every person on Earth's hopes, fears, dreams, furies, everything pretty much, and she tells Cyclops that she will never let them die. And then he blasts Storm and Savior and picks up the Magneto helmet. Savior tells him that none of this truly matters because it's not his reality. And as the Governor General tells Cyclops to off the bastard, the mutant armor smashes through the wall of Savior's cathedral and rescues him, knocking over the Cyclops statue in the process. Meanwhile, Emma informs Scott that she can't even get into Armor's mind, meaning that Savior is controlling her. Storm helps Cyclops and Howlett outside, explaining that she'll do anything to protect the innocent people of the world, and Savior tells them that fighting no longer matters, since the world is very quickly coming to an end without the constant stream of mutant energies. You think Namor's enough? What does he even do down there? Because he's the only one that they didn't free. There's just a little weak Namor still dying downstairs. What on God's green earth was his powers? Keeping the water in place, I guess? That's a good discussion in the comments. What exactly were the other characters' powers being used for in those tubes? Like, what the fuck was Wolverine giving to this? Anyway, Cyclops races out into the streets as the cathedral crumbles down towards civilians, and he blasts it to pieces. People begin crowding him, thanking him, touching him. It's like that Superman rescue scene from Batman v Superman. Emmeline and Howlett then find him, and she says that Savior has opened his mind to her, and revealed that there is only one mutant who has the energy and powers to keep the world from falling apart. And they all come together, back deep within the Santo Marco facility, sexy, shirtless Cyclops leading the way.
Oh, Scott. I've had to say goodbye to you so many times.
Don't worry. I'm sure you'll have plenty more opportunities. Bless you, my son. You just killed us all! Find another way! I know Charles Xavier. I know how powerful and brilliant he truly is. I know that if he wanted to, really wanted to, he could save everyone on this planet without killing thousands to do it. So now's your chance, Charles. Live up to yourself. Every other incarnation of you gave himself over. Every other Scott Summers accepted and sacrificed himself for the good of the world. None of you would have taken this insane risk. You're an aberration, Scott! So, that makes this next step surprisingly easy.
What's going on?
Her powers come from the spirits of her ancestors. Savior just killed off her entire family.
You're sick, Summers! What's wrong with your reality? Some extreme flaw in the warp and weft of your world has pushed its greatest hero over the edge. Extreme enough to justify what I'm about to do next. A ghost box? Yes, with a few modifications. I did try to find another way to save this world. All I needed was enough catalytic power and an alternate reality I could consume with a clear conscience.
Yo, look who I found!
No! Kill them!
Emma Frost.
Emmeline Frost Summers.
Summers?
One can only extend one's bohemian years so far.
Ladies?
Oh, hush, darling. Everything's under control.
Kill them! Kill the Emmas, Hisako! Kill! Armor. Wait. Wait, listen to me.
The train's leaving the station. I only took one elective in interdimensional travel, but I think that the feedback from Savior's Ghost Box has, like, really jacked this one's up, because it's activating its return protocols.
Scott, come on.
I can't just go. This world's broken. I stopped Savior's plan, and now I have to... Howlet! Wait!
Look at you, all ready to sacrifice yourself after all. Do me a favor, Scott. Buy the other me a beer when you get home.
Howlet, wait! 13 hours later at the Utopia Science Lab, Danger and Dr. Nemesis overlook the Ghost Box, which allows users to just travel through alternate dimensions pretty much in a more utilitarian way than we usually see it. Like, it's a very specifically designed machine to travel across realities. But they discover that it is completely unresponsive. Storm and Emma discuss the other world, and Emma says that with the cerebra full of working brains of hundreds of alternate reality Xaviers, they should have the best tools to save themselves. Then Cyclops asks them to stop talking, and he says that they're all gonna be fine, because they're X-Men. And later, Scott has the lockers replaced, and personally repairs all of the name tags. Then he sits down in front of Wolverine's, and uses the sheerest optic blast to crack open a beer, and he drinks it alone. And that's the setup for the story that I'm actually talking about today. I know that might have taken a little longer than anticipated, but hey, you like my longer videos, I think. And I figured that with the well-deserved new appreciation of Cyclops as both a character and a hero, thanks to X-Men 97, it was a cool story to delve into. It really goes into where Scott is at this time in his life, how he's feeling personally and mentally. And Greg Pak is just such a fantastic writer that he can bring so much to this era of a character that is just really hated among comic fans. I haven't read much of this era of X-Men outside of the basic events, but I can't help but love Greg Pak's take on these characters. Like, setting up, it's a 4-issue story arc about some weird-ass alternate reality little mini-adventure that Cyclops goes along on, all by himself. But the bookends of Scott destroying the lockers out of anger for what Wolverine, did to him. He also slashed up his back. I didn't cover that part. At the end, sort of coming to terms in a way and moving past it, burying the hatchet, if you will, with this alternative reality Wolverine, because they have a very nice back and forth where they don't outright say what happened between Scott and Wolverine in the main universe, or the Scott that Governor Howlet knows, but the subtext is there. There's context clues to where they understand that something went on between both of them, blah, blah, blah. It's just so well done to then have Cyclops mend what he broke out of anger in a peaceful way and repair at least his world. Like, he doesn't outright go and make amends with Wolverine, obviously, because they want this to stay a little longer. But it's so well done. It's a very well done emotional sort of arc between only these 4 issues. But let's finally get to what I'm actually talking about today. Released in 2012, written by Greg Pak, with art by Steven Segovia and Paco Diaz, this is Extreme X-Men Volume 1, Xavier Must Die! The story begins right where we left off. Kurt Wagner has just finished linking up the last of the Xavier heads and given them a new directive to teleport the remaining population of the Earth to a brand new one. Outside the Cathedral of the Savior, Howlet, Storm, Armor, and Emmeline Frost Summers work on keeping civilians out of harm's way as Kurt begs the main Xavier head to please find a way to save them from imminent death. Then, the 100 of Xavier heads reach out through the multiverse, locate an uninhabited Earth, and are able to safely teleport the whole population, infrastructure, pretty much everything. And after they do so, all of the Xavier heads overload and explode except for one. And then above them in the sky, a cosmic rift begins to tear. Cut to Earth 616. Dazzler puts on an impromptu show for her fans, and then the camera focuses and it's revealed that it's actually a drag queen putting on a Dazzler performance. But who should be walking by at this exact moment? Allison Blair, aka Dazzler. She brings the show to life with her abilities and keeps walking with her friend and bandmate, Johnny Ito. The two continue down the road, stopping for some ice cream, and then keep going, flirting and talking to one another about life, rehearsals, and whatnot. Unfortunately, though, Dazzler gets a message ordering her to report to Utopia. Later at Utopia, Dazzler is led to the X-Club science lab, where she finds Cyclops and Danger still inside examining the ghost box. She rocks up and greets everybody as Cyclops explains that the ghost box requires a massive amount of energy, and they think that it might be light. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't they just get Jubilee? She has light-based powers. Or, at least invite her to, work alongside Dazzler so that they could both, power it up, right? That, dear viewer, is because Jubilee was a fucking vampire. Anyway, they all begin the experiment, and Dazzler does her thing, and it works perfectly. Danger reports that the ghost box is powered to 100% and an observation portal has begun to open. Then Howlett, Kurt, Emmeline, and Xavier Head fall out of the portal, followed by a monstrous eldritch tentacles as Howlett orders them to close the portal or else this world is gonna die. Everyone fights off the horrible beasts as Danger attempts to shut down the ghost box, but she's damaged in the process, so Dazzler uses her powers to drive the monster back. Xavier Head orders the team to not let the creature get away, as it pulls Dazzler back through the portal with it, and the Extreme X-Men team leap in after her. Then the portal closes, and within this alternate reality, they come face to face with a massive squid-like creature connected with massive metal wires deep within a cave system. And Xavier Head reveals that this is what Charles Xavier looks like in this world. Then everyone except for Howlett falls to the ground as it drives its mental thoughts into their brains. But Howlett isn't having it, snicks his claws, and drives himself into its brain, specifically through the eyeball. Everyone then picks themselves up as Howlett introduces himself to the new girl, then everyone else is introduced. Kurt is actually a huge fan of Dazzler on his world. His version of Dazzler plays the accordion. Then they give her the rundown of what happened at the beginning of the book, and Xavier reveals that he can concentrate enough to open a miniature black hole that transdimensionally teleports them through realities. But when all the Xavier heads teleported the, whatever that other Earth was, it alerted something or some things across the multiverse. And those things were 10 different Charles Xaviers who were either alerted, awoken, or created outright. And now the team has an obligation to stop the Charles Xaviers from whatever evil deeds they might do to their reality or others. And then he prepares to make their next jump. Dazzler's psyche is connected to both Xavier Head and her home reality, allowing her to witness Johnny Ito meet with another woman. So when they arrive at this new reality, she is pretty pissed and easily does away with the Roman soldiers who attempt to barrage the group with arrows. Then the gods arrive. Warren the Herald, Sawtooth the Lord of the Wild, Draka, King of Ice, Namor, God of the Sea, Thor, God of Thunder, and Storm, the All-Mother. Storm grants these outsider mortals one chance to explain themselves and their desecration of the sacred temple by kneeling and praying for mercy. Everyone but Howlett thinks that this is absurd, and he's immediately on the ground explaining that he has a lot of experiences with gods in his world and everyone should just do what they say. And everyone else follows except for Dazzler, causing Thor to slam his hammer down before them, and Dazzler absorbs the sound waves from the attack and casts them right back at Thor. Storm then unleashes lightning upon Dazzler, but Howlett shields her and Emmeline puts Dazzler to sleep and begs them for forgiveness. Sawtooth grabs and pummels Howlett before attempting to devour him, but Howlett cuts his wrist as Namor, just bored of this whole exchange, asks if they can just kill him. And that's when Warren notices that the head looks a lot like Xavier. Sometime later, Dazzler wakes up in a large room to find Warren standing guard over her. She demands some clothes, and he magics her up some clothes, and by that I mean a Slave Leia costume, and he leads her to them. Kurt and Howlett reveal to her that they took Emmeline and Xavier to the All-Mother, and then Kurt says that Emmeline is shorting out his brain or something because he can't teleport anymore. Then Emmeline and Xavier arrive to instruct the others to make their presence known to the Queen of All. They are led by the human slave, Johnny Ito. As the group is led through the mighty palace, the gods explain that they are in their 9th year of drought, even though the heads of their pantheon can control the weather. And Hallett explains that they don't give a shit about human suffering. The group arrive before Queen Storm and King Thor. She reveals that the psychics have pledged their service to the gods, and Allison is shocked before Xavier whispers and reminds her of their mission to find Xavier. Storm then instructs Dazzler to sing for them. Johnny Ito is instructed to step forward, and as Dazzler refuses, he tells her that occasionally the gods will burn everything for miles when they get angry. So the duo begin a performance, which touches Storm in a way she hasn't felt in a long time. And from above the temple, clouds form swiftly, growing in massive radius until the air is soaked with rain, and Xavier Head congratulates Allison as Storm orders Sawtooth to kill them all. The rain immediately stops and the Extreme X-Men begin facing off against the gods. Then Xavier and Magnus arrive on their tricked-out flying death car and rescue the X-Men, leaving Xavier Head and Emmeline behind. Kurt teleports the group to the ruins of a city miles away, and they fly through it as Xavier and Magnus introduce themselves. Meanwhile, in the far-off distance, a massive explosion fires into a mountain as Xavier reveals that he created a mental projection of the group and led the gods to an uninhabited area where they think that they killed him. Then Xavier demands to know why they came here to kill him. Dazzler says that's not the plan anymore, and Hallett says that his super senses don't detect any lies or trickery from this Charles. Dazzler reveals to him that their Xavier told them that this Xavier was evil just before he betrayed them to the gods. Then the duo fly the X-Men through a hidden force field into the island of Utopia. They're briefly greeted by Reed Richards as Xavier explains this weird steampunk fortress. Currently, there are 5,000 inhabitants, and they are all hidden from the gods by artificial psychic shielding, which Xavier has to rebuild each morning. Then Howlett snicks his claws, smelling a god nearby. And Hercules slams his fist straight into Howlett's face, and Xavier explains that Hercules is a mere demigod who has always stood with his mother's people. Hercules laughs raucously as he helps Howlett up, and all of the emotion drops from the Governor General's face. Dazzler asks if he's okay, and Howlett simply says that he knew a Hercules on his world, and then drops the subject. Sometime later, in this world's version of Cerebro or Cerebra, Xavier brings up a mental projection of the god's fortress, and one of the things they witness is Johnny Ito, now kidnapped and enslaved, and then they realize that he has a different relationship with Emmeline Frost Summers. But unfortunately, Emmeline and Xavier Head both notice Xavier and shut him down. He writhes in pain as he states their mission: kill the psychics. Dazzler, not comfortable with this murderous plan, argues against it, and then Xavier shouts,
"If the gods have their own mind readers, it's only a matter of time before they find this place. I can feel the other Xavier prodding at the corners of my consciousness. He is dangerous and ruthless, much more powerful than I expected. We must deal with him before he kills me, and the gods kill everyone in this city."
At dawn the next day, Magnus's army marches upon the Fortress of the Gods, and within the fortress, Xavier alerts Queen Storm that he's sensing something, Xavier's presence within her mind. But Thor demands that the heads stay back and slaps him away like a beach ball. Then Kurt bamps the group right before the king and queen. Hercules slams Thor's head with his mace, and Dazzler unleashes her power as Howlett goes for Xavier Head. Xavier Head pleads with Howlett to stop and says that this Xavier has been mind-controlling the gods. And everyone stops as Xavier uses his ability to order Storm to kill Xavier Head, but he's ran through by Dazzler's light. Xavier Head explains that this Xavier has been driving the gods to utter madness. But now that he's lost control, Xavier Head has locked him out for good, and the gods are once more free. Although I'm not too sure how much evil control he'd really have over Sawtooth. Magnus goes to his oldest friend and asks why he did this, and Xavier reveals that he made Magnus forget the past, when the gods were perfect and benevolent, and humans were nothing but sheep. But after Xavier began manipulating them, mere mortals like himself, Magnus, Reed, everyone at Utopia became able to take on the gods themselves, and it was only when they fought the gods that they could become the best versions of themselves. Xavier begs his old friend to not let the gods reign control like they once did. And then Magnus snaps Xavier's neck. Sometime later, Storm, Thor, and the rest of the gods heal the world that they were twisted into destroying. Storm and the others publicly thank the X-Men for restoring the world to what it once was, and offer them all a gift: immortality and life amongst the pantheon of the gods. Xavier Head and the others decline the offer, but Emmeline, with nothing truly to go back to in her old life, accepts it, and she is transformed into a woman of diamond, and accompanied by Johnny Ito. Dazzler, unimpressed and annoyed, demands that Xavier and the rest hit the road. But before they do, she decides on one final act. She runs over, kisses this Johnny Ito, and then struts back over to the others as Hercules heartily laughs, and the Extreme X-Men teleport away. Cut to Graymalkin, Arizona. In the town saloon, Victor Creed folds to a man called New York Charlie, and then he realizes he has no idea why he did that. Creed tosses Charlie out of the window and prepares to crush him with a steampunk heater when Sheriff Summers puts a stop to this with his concussive optic blast. He saunters over and reminds New York Charlie that he was told to hit the road. Creed says that Charlie got all up in his head, and Charlie tries to explain it as a simple party trick when Sheriff Summers clocks him in the face. This town don't abide by a mentalist. Charlie picks himself back up and blood begins gushing from the sheriff's nose. Creed grabs his head in pain and falls to the ground, and the nearby townsfolk begin lifting into the air, screaming in pain as though they were on a timer. Each of them have their heads detonated at the exact same moment. And New York Charlie replaces his hat and smiles devilishly. 1 year later, the Extreme X-Men arrive. And you may have noticed that the art changed at the beginning of this Western-themed story, but it's very noticeable once Dazzler comes along. I don't know what the best way to describe it would be. Bimbo-ish? Cheesecake pinup? It's just like, you'll see, but in the past story, she didn't choose those clothes for herself, and when she was on regular Earth, she was wearing just normal clothes, right? And like when she got the bikini outfit, that was just dumbass angel god giving that to her as like a sort of like a concubine outfit. But you'll see what I'm talking about in just a little bit. Once Dazzler starts choosing her new outfits, which just make no sense. She's wearing, like, crop top push-up bras in the Wild West. Anyway, Dazzler complains about Xavier Head dropping them above ground level, and Xavier returns that 10 feet over is better than 10 feet under. Then Howlett smells something on the wind. Horses, cheap liquor, cheaper cologne. My kind of town. The group find a farmstead and purloin some clothes, and head into Graymalkin. They can't at least put a hat on Xavier Head. The discussion of their plan is interrupted when a woman and her son are harassed by Creed and Toynbee, who are trying to get money and a little sugar from her. When she tries to push her and her son away, Toynbee trips her, and her son Jamie snicks his claws in anger. He cuts open Toynbee's face as Howlett watches in shock. Creed slaps young Jamie and prepares to kill the boy when Howlett snicks his claws and races towards him. Dazzler puts the kibosh on some gunslingers who prepare to fire on Howlett, but unfortunately there's a much larger army in the building across the street. Howlett orders the group to take the mother and daughter to safety as he leaps once more into the fray. Then old Metal Pete slams his hammer directly into Howlett's skull. Elizabeth says that they just don't want any trouble, especially not while the boss has her husband. And Howlett's semi-conscious mind races back to a time when he was a boy, and his father helped him go back to sleep after he had a nightmare. And then he awakens fully in a prison cell with metal wrapped around his arms, looks over to discover his father chained up. James points out that Howlett was dead when they dropped him off, but now he's breathing like any man would, and asks his fellow captive if he has the touch. And Howlett snicks his claws when New York Charlie interrupts. Howlett races at him, and Charlie blasts him straight in the skull. Then he inspects Howlett and discovers the adamantine plating beneath his skin. And Charlie says that they're gonna have to do something about this. Later in the saloon, Dazzler's all dolled up, playing Beautiful Dreamer for the patrons. But she's secretly using echolocation with her powers to locate the prison that Howlett is being kept in. Kurt teleports himself and Dazzler inside, where they find the wrong Howlett. James reveals that the boss took him a while ago, and then they both writhe back in pain and are narrowly able to teleport away back to the ranch with James. Dazzler says that the boss is definitely on his way to the ranch, so Dazzler looks upon the two children, the dying man and his wife, and a floating head, and starts concocting a plan of attack. And later that night, Summers leads the Xavier gang out into the desert. Later that night, Xavier Head lets the others know that the boss is cloaking his location. So Dazzler does the next best thing and illuminates the entire desert. Summers fires off his blast at the trio, and they learn that Howlett is in the gang. Kurt teleports down to save him, but Howlett tries to rip him apart, so he teleports back. Xavier Head reveals that New York Charlie doesn't actively control his gang. Instead, he has ripped out parts of their minds to keep them from being ruthless, animalistic murderers. It's like a lobotomy, but more evil. Then the boss calls everyone to a halt, and he orders Dazzler and the others to stand down, or else he'll have his gang kill her, her friends, and the Howlett family, which he doesn't want to do because they have something that he wants. Himself. And then Xavier Head is knocked into an astral realm where he is psychically captured by Charlie.
Let me go.
Oh, you're me.
I'm not you. Of course you are. I am Charles Xavier, a genius born into idle wealth and celebrity, but I also knew I was something more. So I built my labs, taught myself genetics and molecular biology. I studied my own DNA. I was the first to identify the mutant gene. But my abilities let me skim the thoughts of others, and I knew how much perfectly normal people hate and fear each other, much less the truly unknown. So I assembled a team of bright, young mutants, and I taught them to be role models and ambassadors and entertainers. And the world loved them. And one night, I watched them die, and I reacted poorly.
You are too hard on yourself, Xavier.
No! Never. We should never give in like that. That's all I do. I know. And I'll stop.
Then Kurt returns and helps deal with danger, only to hear a scream in the distant farmhouse. They teleport to find Summers waiting outside for them. Dazzler tells him that Xavier can help them, and pleads that even in this universe, he must be a hero. He opens fire on her until Dazzler knocks off his visor, then Creed races towards the two as she uses Summers as a weapon to launch Creed away. Then she kicks the door down and finds Charlie and the Governor General holding the Howlett family hostage. She blasts the lobotomized Howlett, and Xavier taunts her as he uses his powers to freeze her in place. Then little Jamie snicks his bone claws and leaps at Charlie, but is caught by Howlett, who tosses him aside.
Thank you, Governor Howlett. You're welcome. But I didn't do it for you. Sorry, lad. Old brain just finished healing up. But, hey, listen to me. A boy shouldn't kill until he's at least 18.
2 weeks later, the town of Greymalkin has returned to what it once was before New York Charlie took over. Danger has been repurposed as a tractor. Metal Pete and Creed have been reverted to their former minds, along with Sheriff Summers, who thanks the Extreme X-Men for all that they did. James has also been given medical attention and is back on his feet, and then he's surrounded by murderous machines. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode of What Is. Let me know what you thought of the story in the comments below. As always, let me know of any recommendations of books in the comments below, specifically Ultimate books, since, again, I am covering a lot of Ultimate comics this year, so let me know of any Ultimate storylines that you really dig. I personally absolutely love this series of Extreme X-Men. It's such a blast with so many great, unique characters, not just in this volume, but the whole series as well. Governor General Howlett is definitely my favorite of the bunch. I think he's just the coolest Wolverine that they've ever made. And it really brings a breath of fresh air to the X-Men, especially at this point in time. It's something, I'm not going to say lighthearted because it gets pretty fucking dark in the next coming volumes, but it's just such a unique and crazy fun idea. It's almost like Excalibur with like the weird multiversal stuff going on, but even weirder. And it's just really creative. It's a very creative, fun story. It really is a multiverse of madness. And hopefully this video does well, because I would like to cover the next 2 volumes of this Extreme X-Men series to show you where this storyline goes, because there are a lot of other evil Xaviers that they have to deal with. Remember, it was 10 in total, and so far they've only dealt with, what, 3? Again, let me know what you thought in the comments below. As always, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos, my Etsy, blaketwild.etsy.com, and follow me on Instagram at NotBlakeWild, and I will see you next time for another X-Men themed video. I don't know why I'm doing so much X-Men all of a sudden. I'm just trying to get it out before Deadpool and Wolverine. Bye!